Yooka Laylee. This game was supposed to be the regenesis of the platformer collectathon games of yesteryear. The very notion that some of the original Rare employees were working on new games sold me right away. I knew it had to be a day one purchase for me. But then Playtonic announced the game as a Kickstarter campaign, and all my hope faded away near instantly. You see, Kickstarter campaigns rarely work out to plan. Hell, even regular games have trouble with budgets. After funding a few projects previously, Pebble Smartwatch, Smart Power Strip, you begin to grow suspicious of anything that requests your money 2 years before the product is due. Okay, this isn't a rant about Kickstarter, so let's get into a short history of Rare. While Rare started off making a bunch of forgettable games, it wasn't really until Battletoads where the developers started to shine. They then created the Donkey Kong Country series, which in my opinion started the golden age of Rare. We got GoldenEye, Diddy Kong Racing, and then Banjo-Kazooie. I remember reading a Nintendo Power and needing this game. I remember standing outside of a Zeller's and waiting for a taxi, just reading the game manual. And if that doesn't date me, I don't know what does. I was so excited to get home and finally play it. I remember loving the hell out of Banjo-Kazooie. We then later got Donkey Kong 64, Perfect Dark, Banjo-Tooie, Conker's Bad Fur Day, and Star Fox Adventures. And that's where I believe Rare started dropping out. Conveniently, right after the Microsoft sale. No coincidence. Okay, I confess, I never owned Donkey Kong 64, Perfect Dark, or GoldenEye. And I never played Conker's Bad Fur Day or Banjo-Tooie till at least 10 years after. Either way, I think the perfect way to symbolize that the soul of Rare was lost was Conker Live and Reloaded. A grittier remaster of the game that removes swearing, but that's no match for the giant FU we got a few years down the line with Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts. Never have I seen a more blissful ignorance of what fans were craving for until Nintendo with Metroid Prime Federation Force. Our once beloved platformer has turned into a cart builder with a physics playground. Pitchforks went up in year, calls for Microsoft to free Rare from the shackles of making Kinect games and let them run free with Nintendo again. But is Microsoft even to blame for the fall of Rare? I feel like their games were falling even before that sale. Sure, they were still all great games, but if you listen to some of the complaints of Donkey Kong 64 that involved a ton of backtracking, Banjo-Tooie I remember being very large and confusing. We also had the giant polarizing game that was Star Fox Adventures, which I actually liked. Okay, so I haven't talked about Yooka Laylee yet, but I'm getting close. Eventually, a few of the Rare employees got burnt out from making mindless Kinect games that they finally got together to form Playtonic Games. And here we are back at the beginning of the video. And why is any of this important? It's just to let you know how I feel about Rare and its games. Right, so Yooka Laylee, it's not good. Maybe that's a bit harsh. Yooka Laylee is not as good. But hear me out. The writing, humor, puns, fourth wall jokes are all tight, and they brought a smile to my face. Trouser Snake is my favorite character from the Rare catalog. The worlds look pretty, there's variety in all of them with plenty of sub-areas to explore that can help keep the game fresh. For the most part, the game is very tight, and I rarely had a problem with the camera or the controls. But that's where it starts to break down. Most times I didn't have a problem with them, but the times I did, oh man was it maddening. Having the camera randomly shift around or get stuck is so frustrating. It didn't happen too much, thankfully, but then we get to the controls and movement. It's great running around, but then we get to rolling, and oh god, the rolling. The rolling is insanely fast, which makes the boost roll you get later on in the game somewhat arbitrary. All these problems are compounded when the game forces you to use the roll at certain points. There was one part in the casino level where you press a button to open a door. You then have to roll and race to where the door is closing. It felt like there was very little wiggle room with the timing, and pretty much nothing else in the game forced you to be so accurate. Sure, get good, but it's kind of hard to do when these skills aren't really useful anywhere else. Speaking of the casino level, holy crap is the entire world a bother. Slot machines, pachinko, all of it is really annoying. Doing the slot machine once was alright, but having to do the 6 or so? Did you fail? Well, then you need to lick the handle, which felt like a crapshoot whether you locked on or not. And then it was a boss fight. After an eye-gouging cartwheel section, more on that later, we are treated to an on-rails boss. It felt like I had to memorize the entire attack pattern, and even then, it felt like some attacks were unavoidable. Now the Kartos challenges. Let's get into those because they are the bane of my existence. The controls felt inaccurate and random when they decided to work. I wouldn't accelerate after tapping the stick, I do it accidentally, every possible combination you can think of. That alone is terrible, but then you have shooting and jumping. Some gems were hanging over the edge so you had to fall and jump afterwards. Jumping over one enemy made you miss another gem somewhere else. And to add fuel to the fire of rage, failing backed you out of the whole thing. You got a retry message and then you had to go back into it. However, if you did pass the course, but didn't collect enough gems, it would give you an instant retry. Eventually, they finally added a restart option with a patch, but failing still boots you out. It is unthinkable on how something this simple can be overlooked even after patches. However, if you think that's bad, the Rextro minigames were just as bad, if not worse. Similar situations where you have janky ass controls, but failing boots you to the score page, then boots you to the main overworld where you get a chance to retry, then boots you to the start of the game with the control screen, and then you get to retry. Why all the unnecessary steps for retrying? Again, eventually a retry button was patched in, but it feels insane that it was not in the game to begin with. It's as if these sections were never playtested by an actual player. I think it's obvious that the game wasn't playtested, and I pretty much found that out less than an hour into the game, where you found Nimble, the Cloud Racer. To play, you race across the map using your infamous roll ability, but you had to collect butterflies along the way or else you'd run out of stamina, which is all good for one attempt. But then you fail it once, it's your first try. But when you redo it, you notice that there's a butterfly missing. Now on your third attempt, you will see no butterflies. That's because retrying doesn't actually reset the position of the butterflies. How this was never caught in testing, I will never understand. But I feel it was at this moment I knew I was playing an unpolished mess. This was further amplified by issues I was having in the snow world with the frame rate, and eventually I just stopped playing the game until the next major patch. The patch did fix quite a bit, and it was enough for me to finish the game and 100% it. Towards the end of the game, you unlock a flying ability, which is overpowered as hell. While in Banjo-Kazooie, you needed to find a flying pad. In Yooka Laylee, you could do it anywhere. You could skip entire platforming sections, making bosses a breeze, move around areas faster than anything. While it's a move that certainly made traveling a hell of a lot easier, I did felt conned that I did a bunch of challenges the fair way instead of just cheesing it. Now let's back up a bit here and talk about Yooka and Laylee themselves. I hate Yooka and I hate Laylee. They seem to lack the whole charm of the bear and bird. Banjo was a goofy bear, a play on the hillbilly stereotype, right down to its name. Kazooie was as well a loud, obnoxious bird to live up to its name. Yooka, by contrast, just sounds like an apathetic teenager. Laylee is a clone of Kazooie, pretty much, and something about her just lacks the same charm. The story also lacks that call to action that saving her sister did in Banjo-Kazooie. So we have to save a book. Why? This book was just a coaster a few moments ago. What does it matter if capital B, great name by the way, takes all the books? No one else seems to give a damn. And you collect these golden pages and use them to unlock tomes? I thought you needed them for your book. Okay, I guess the story is just a vehicle to get you from one world to the other, so it doesn't really have to make sense, right? Now, what about those expansive worlds? In short, they suck. Expanded, they suck. Bigger doesn't always mean better, and the large worlds become a bother to traverse without the super overpowered flying ability. Also, I did not care for the expanding world mechanic, and I wish the game just had the large world to begin with. They should just stick to having specific areas locked out by moves you unlock later. Right now, they just have 2 separate ways to lock content out. Now, one thing I haven't touched on yet are the transformations. While no mumbo jumbo, Dr. Puzz often has some great transformations for you, except for the final one. Yes, the ship. It moves so slowly. In a level where you unlock the flying ability, it just feels like an insult. On top of all that, you get a boss which you have to face with the transformation. Again, it's hell to aim your shots, and I felt a huge disconnect between controls and what the ship was doing. I did find the music in the game fantastic, however, it was eerily very similar to Banjo-Kazooie, at least for the overworld. I guess a few small points to wrap this up. The reflectability seems to be a huge mystery on how the hell I was supposed to know that going invisible causes you to reflect lasers. Trouser Snake never tells it to you, and it's not even on the move list. Believe it or not, there are items you can get in the game that don't show up on any tally list anywhere. I completely missed all of them, and those are the pirate treasures. The only way I found out was that I was missing a bunch of PlayStation trophies. Normally the game is supposed to tease you with one, so you know that you're supposed to look for them. Some of the quill positions appear completely random as all hell, with one in World 1 being in a place that it literally feels like you are glitching the geometry to get there. Banjo-Kazooie had notes that guided you around the level. In Yooka Laylee you had a path that looked like it was taking you to a secret location, but it just led you to nothing. There was one ability called the Sonar Explosion, with the description saying, "Don't use near glass." So what do you think I tried? I tried going near some glass with some cracks on it hoping it would break. Nope, you need to use the boost roll for that. The quizzes in the game are clearly a direct nod to Banjo-Kazooie, however, instead of having just one, we get 3 of them. And the text in the quizzes progress very slowly, and I found myself to spam the X button only to accidentally answer the question incorrectly. Or correctly if I'm lucky. What is even the point of the Rextro room in the overworld? There's no additional pages you could get. All the minigames can be accessed through the main menu anyways. There's more minigames in here than in the worlds. So it would make sense that you get an additional page maybe? Not that I would want to do more Rextro stuff, but it's there. Speaking of the main menu, I found it funny how one of the names spans across 2 lines and all the other ones are just a single line. It's a bit odd. Dare I even mention Jontron? His removal in the game feels like an irrational decision. I highly doubt that most people would care who makes some random squawking noises for 30 seconds. Would people even know that's Jontron if it was not pointed out? But to John, a person whose image is modeled after Banjo-Kazooie, to cut him out of a small cameo? Really? So did Yooka Laylee succeed with its promise of bringing back the 3D platformer? Well, yeah, it is a 3D platformer, and yes, the game has been released. So it's a mission success, right? Well, I would say so, yeah. With Yooka Laylee's success, we've had other collectathon style games like the Hat in Time come out, Microsoft re-releasing Rare Replay with all the classic Banjo-Kazooie and Conker's Bad Fur that you would want. Maybe Yooka Laylee, copyright Digital Gamma, please give me money for this name Platonic, can be an even better game with tighter controls. With all the complaining I did about the game, you would probably think I hated it, but that's not actually true. I liked the game and ended up enjoying myself most of the time. Just sometimes I didn't.